Chivalry 2 has large-scale, realistic medieval warfare on both PC and, thankfully for us, console, with crossplay between all platforms. I'm Brevon, and today I'm here with Nathaniel once again.
Believe that.
To discuss and analyze our experiences with Chivalry 2.
It compares to Battlefield, but set in the medieval era, with a large variety of melee weapons and many, but not to the same extent, ranged weapons.
Yeah.
The standard game mode for Chivalry 2 is a 64-player objective-based game mode where the objective tends to vary based on what map that you're playing. Some maps you might have to go destroy like a statue, or other ones you need to escort a bomb to a door, or escort a siege tower, a human being, or try to take out some of their men, or capture an objective. There's all sorts of different objectives in this game.
Yeah, and it's in the 64-player mode, it is a linear objective. One group is defending and one group is attacking.
Yeah. Much like Battlefront 2.
Yeah, Battlefront 2 by EA, 2016, I believe is when it came out. They had a mode, the original main mode in that game was called Galactic Assault, and it worked very much in the same way. Each map is a unique scenario in this game mode. On the other side, we have the 40-player game mode, which is just a straight melee between 20v20, mainly just team deathmatch modes without much objectives.
I believe there's some. Isn't there some objective?
Yeah, but it is more for just the. I believe it is more for just like team deathmatches and stuff.
Yeah, for the most part, is generally team deathmatches, and then there's some even more competitive and more arena type modes like 3v3 and 1v1.
And then there are private servers that you can have, and there's a list of private servers you can join, which can have lots of unique rules. While the customization isn't huge, there's also rules that are just like enforced by the people in the server as usual. So when it comes to combat, like we said, you have both melee and ranged, and of course combat is the main gameplay loop and the main focus of Chivalry 2. Melee is definitely a bit more of a focus than ranged, but the ranged combat is pretty good as well. When it comes to melee combat, you have a number of different ways you can attack with your weapon.
Yeah. You can end up attacking from side to side with side swipes, usually covering a pretty large area around you. And then you can have overhead attacks, where you do a lot more damage and are more likely to hit them in the head, which obviously for most games does more damage. And then you have stabs, which stabs usually are weaker, but faster and more strategically timed. But there's all sorts of different avenues for attacking someone with melee.
One of the most unique things that Chivalry 2 does with its melee combat as well is the ability to aim your weapon and move it by moving the camera.
Yeah. So you can kind of turn into your attack. So as you're swinging, say, from right to left, you might turn left so that your swing makes contact earlier on in your attack. And that can be used very strategically. When someone's good at blocking, you might want to try to do a combo where you do movements like that, so that they have a harder time blocking.
And it feels really good, responsive. Like, it didn't feel like it was difficult to use or like it obscured my ability to look around.
Yeah.
And you really do feel like your weapon always goes in the place that you're aiming it once you get the hang of it.
And a strategy I've seen plenty of people do in combination to that is crouching while doing a side swing. They often will try to do that to attack from a from an area you're not likely to be trying to block. While they're not really likely to hit a lot of your vital organs, side swipes can still be very powerful attacks in this game.
One thing with side swipes, though, is this game does have friendly fire. And if you're not careful with your side swipe, you could decapitate 3 of your allies or more.
Yeah.
While they're also good to... You can hit 3 different enemies with a side swipe if you do it right.
Yeah, this game makes sure that a really skilled player will be able to take on more than one player at a time, while also making sure that if people try to gang up, they need to be extra careful not to hit their allies. So if they're really skilled, they can run in a group without having to worry about a bunch of friendly fire. But the likelihood everyone in the group is going to be skilled enough not to hit each other is not super high. Generally in this game, if you get hit while you're trying to attack, it will interrupt your attack.
Yeah.
So if you're swinging and you have a bunch of allies next to you fighting separate battles and you accidentally hit them, you can actually sabotage your ally on accident.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful with your attacks.
I mean, it de-incentivizes ganging up on people and just forming too big of groups or piles. It incentivizes spreading things out and being a little bit more strategic with your positioning.
Yeah. Well, also allowing those who are skilled to still try to do those strategies often. And then, like a lot of games, there's also a power attack if you hold down the main attack.
That's a good segue into the blocking system and the stamina. So stamina is similar to like Dark Souls and very many games. Stamina just controls everything you do, whether you're hitting, sprinting, blocking. You're going to need stamina to do that. So power attacks obviously take more stamina and are a bit slower and easier to block. But if you do block a power attack, whether it be with a shield or a weapon, it's going to take more stamina away from you when you get hit. And so if you get hit with multiple power attacks, your stamina is likely to go down. And once your stamina is down, you can't block anymore, and you're just going to start getting pounded on. But the same thing goes for them. They got to manage their stamina as it's going down with their power attacks. And to avoid this entirely while blocking, you can parry.
Yeah. For parrying, you're going to want to block right before the weapon makes contact with you. Blocking generally works in a similar way to how the attacking, you can turn your screen while doing it to try to cover right where the weapon's going to hit you from. If you end up blocking and are looking in the wrong direction, you won't block anything.
Yeah.
You want to try to block right at where the end of their weapon is going to hit you.
It's all very, like, almost physics-based. Like,
Yeah.
everything feels like it's got real momentum to it, and it's going to hit where it's going to hit.
Yeah.
And so you have to block where it's going to hit. And it's throughout this whole game, we see a great combination of realism and just gameplay, good gameplay, and gamification.
Yeah. And with the parrying, though, it usually is going to make them take slightly longer to make their next attack, and also it saves some of your stamina when blocking in a parry.
Yeah.
But then, if you attack right after your parry...
It also has to be the same kind of attack they did to you.
And
a stab,
in the same
a
attack.
side swipe, or a overhead.
Then you will do a riposte. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Where...
Riposte!
Yeah, riposte! Well...
Riposte!
Samurai all of a sudden. Well, you want to try to do the same attack right after having done a parry so that you can then follow up the block with an attack. They can always do it back and make this volley of these attacks back and forth.
It's like it's like Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Yeah, just the constant smashing the lightsabers.
And then when you both suck at aiming, it's like when they do the thing. Where they just miss each other's
Where they're just
lightsabers over and over again.
again.
Let's hope I'm not too lazy to find a clip of this. I will say one thing this game does well is its tutorial is really great. It explains absolutely everything you need to know in, I think, a digestible way. It might just be because I've played a lot of games. It might be kind of information overload for some people who don't know what they're doing, but I felt the tutorial explained things very well.
Yeah, I feel like it doesn't really drag on a whole lot while also taking enough time to make sure you can digest things.
Yeah.
It's a really well-made tutorial. Another tactic that you can have in combat is, say, you want to stab somebody, but they're way over there. You can just throw your sword at them if you really want to. There's plenty of throwing weapons in this game that seem to be a little less unyieldy when you throw them, but you can actually throw any weapon in this game.
Yeah, big axes, bardishes, a maul, whatever.
I forgot about those bardishes.
You gotta look out for them bardishes. Just come flying at you from a tower wall.
And then you can also pick up almost all the objects that you see lying on the ground. You can pick up ballista bolts. You can pick up a harp and throw it at people.
After playing it.
Yeah, after playing it. You could play the harp and throw it at people. A flute, someone's severed head. You can drink alcohol from a mug and it'll give you some weird visual effects and then throw it at people.
Yes, you can throw people's severed limbs, and that brings up something with the aimed melee attacks. Depending on where you hit them, where you aim your attack, you can dismember all of their limbs. It's a full dismemberment system that works with, head, arms, legs, and if you get a leg I don't know if it works with legs.
If your leg gets chopped off, you die.
Okay, but if you get one of your arms chopped off, there is a bleeding out timer, like a sort of last chance thing where you can still run around and kill people.
If you get healed, though, you are able to continue surviving with your chopped off arm. And sometimes it's a really great time when you, having only one arm, are able to take on a huge group of people and win. But I think that it's a good way at practically punishing you for having failed enough to lose your arm, but then giving you that chance at redemption by using your one arm to take on a huge amount of people. And even then, sometimes you're just a meat shield for somebody else behind you.
Time to kill can be pretty quick, depending on classes have different levels of health, which we'll get into classes here a little bit later. But yeah, time to kill can be pretty quick. You can get killed pretty fast, but at the same time, time to get back into the game, respawn times are usually pretty low.
Yeah.
And talking about the dismembered limb system, when you get your arm cut off, there's text that comes on the screen that says it's just a flesh wound, and that brings up
they know their audience.
Yeah, and the tone of this game is very a combination of very realistic stuff with a sort of goofiness added to the whole thing.
Yeah, people can be screaming out movie quotes practically in goofy voices one moment, but then you see somebody's arms get chopped off and they're running around with no arms before getting beheaded right in front of you. All sorts of things like that can occur in this game.
Yeah, and it's they know, they're trying to make this realistic medieval warfare game, but they know that it's just a game and that they shouldn't take it quite too seriously. Whereas if you're doing something like World War II, it's a little bit, that's so close that it's a little bit harder to do that. Although
Team Fortress,
I was about to say you could do that.
Not realistic. I meant a more recent type of warfare, but make it super goofy.
Yeah.
So beyond all of this melee combat and being able to throw what is generally a melee weapon or really short-ranged ranged weapon, there's also a list of longer-ranged weapons, such as the longbow, crossbow, and javelins.
As well as mounted ballistas and even cannons.
Yeah. These ranged weapons, they generally feel pretty good. The aiming in the game works pretty well. I'd say it's been optimized all right, and also like melee combat, it does different damage depending on where it hits somebody. I think that mechanic makes it pretty useful. If you can headshot somebody even with the weakest bow, it does a ton of damage. And then with the crossbow, it generally will insta-kill someone if you headshot them. The drawback on being able to stand super far away and slowly knock down the health or outright assassinate people from super far away is countered by having much lower health and by usually having only a small melee weapon as a side or a secondary weapon. Then when it comes to some of these bigger contextual weapons like the ballista, you can hit multiple targets, generally as an insta-kill. There's catapults that can hit a huge area, and then the cannon as well.
The aiming feels appropriately ramshackle, but at first, once you get the hang of it, it feels pretty good. It isn't like Mountain Blade, where it's like almost impossible, at least on controller, to be good with a bow.
Well, Mountain Blade, the guy you're shooting at's going to like rubber band 100 feet away from where he was standing and then attack you.
I think that was just your internet.
Yeah, probably just my internet. You're right. I had terrible internet then.
So, in addition to all these different ranged weapons, which, like we've spoke of, have a very good variety, the variety of melee weapons is bold. It is wide. Mauls and hammers. There's a shovel. Yeah, and each of these weapons does different damage depending on whether you're swinging to the side or overhead or stabbing. Like swords and spears are obviously going to be better at stabbing, whereas an axe is going to be more of a swinging weapon.
Yeah, like whenever you try to stab with an axe, it kind of just seems like you're hitting the guy with the end of it, just like poking him real hard with the end of a stick.
Yeah. But they have different swing speeds and
different swing speeds, different stab speeds.
The range is very important.
Yeah, like some classes have pole arms, and those have a lot of range for a melee weapon, while also still being good at stabbing too, because they have the spike on the end. Someone's gonna hop in here, by the way, and bring up the most obscure medieval weapon to exist, and be like, "I didn't see this in Chivalry 2." Just like, where's the sword breaker? Where's the titty ripper? I'm not kidding. That's a real thing.
Oh my gosh. So overall, weapon variety is excellent, and for me, it covers all of the bases and even more than I would want out of a game like this, a medieval combat game.
Yeah, to be honest, it's almost overwhelming to choose some of these weapons. There's an insane number of these
But luckily, they're broken down into each of the game's classes and subclasses have specific weapons that they can choose from. But even still, each of those has like 5 or more weapons they can choose from.
If you kill a guy from another class, you could just pick up his weapon even though you couldn't have started out with it. It obviously really adds a lot to this game. In one life, so much can occur.
Yeah. So when it comes to the game's main 4 classes, you have the archer, and that is the main outlier here. But the other 3 classes, the main thing that separates them is their stats, which is health and speed mainly.
And stamina.
That is a big factor. You have the
Mr. Why am I spacing his name? Quentin Tarantino over here.
The footman.
Medieval
Quentin Tarantino. He's the middleman. He has your average health and your average stamina and your average whatever. Speed. The Vanguard has higher speed, higher stamina, lower health, and the Knight has the highest health of any of the characters. They're walking tanks. Very appropriate for what those were in medieval times, what those roles were. But where the real... Other than the archer, where the main distinction, I think, in classes comes is the subclasses. Each of these 4 classes has 3 subclasses. And these subclasses have, for one, they have unique weapons and equipment and some abilities. But on top of that, there's active abilities. You have passives that really change the game on each of these subclasses.
So... one of the biggest differences that most early on players will notice is that there is, amongst the subclasses, there is different abilities or items that you might start with. other than your weapon, such as for the Devastator subclass of Vanguard. He starts off with a firebomb, covers an area of the ground in fire. Anybody who touches it dies very quickly.
It fits the Devastator class and the
Yeah.
Vanguard class as a
Yeah.
whole, being this more aggressive playstyle with higher stamina and speed. And
There is a Knight class with it as well, though. We had forgotten to mention earlier, everybody spawns with one med kit and can heal up.
no regenerating health.
Yeah, no regenerating health for you. So the footman is able to hand out these med kits. I think you can stack up to 2 in total in your inventory. Now, the only instance of your health regenerating beyond using these med kits is another item that generally you'll see in the Knight classes,
Two
but
other
can
items.
also find in the Vanguard. What?
2 items. The horn
yes.
and the banner.
Yes,
they work
2 other
very
items.
similar. One is an instant heal,
Yeah.
and the other
One
is an
time
AoE.
use, everyone around you will start to heal, and then the banner and AoE, everyone within a proximity of it heals. And then I believe the last item that people can spawn with is the quiver. Whenever they use the quiver, any ranged classes or anybody holding like a bow or crossbow or spears will immediately get their stock refilled completely.
They refill everybody's ammunition.
Yeah, but specifically with those type of weapons.
And so overall, the equipment for each of these classes is really interesting and unique. When I first started playing, I kind of thought that the support abilities compared to something like Battlefield weren't quite as in-depth. But the more I played, I started to feel like there definitely is a lot of supporting and teamwork that can be done in this game. Add on to that things like loading siege weapons for people.
Well, I feel like the supporting abilities in this game, the healing ones are definitely super useful. Oftentimes, I get really damaged on the front lines in this game. I head back just a little bit and then wait for somebody to pop one of those trumpets that heals everyone or a banner.
Let me just pop a trumpet real quick. So in addition to these abilities and consumables, the subclasses also have a number of passive abilities. Each subclass gets some unique ones, and that really adds a good amount of uniqueness to each subclass. For example, one of the Vanguard classes can use 2 primary weapons, which is a huge thing. Usually you can only use a primary and a secondary, secondaries being like daggers, small swords, hatchets, whereas this class can use 2 primary weapons. One of my favorite strategies to use with this guy is throw the first primary weapon and then whip out your second one and just start hammering on people. One of the classes gets increased sprint, or they can run faster with 2-handed weapons, and just all kinds of stuff like that. There's some that have higher support ability, or like their support abilities are used more, or support abilities are better, like they heal more, stuff like that.
There's one subclass that damages any breakable objects even more.
And a funny thing about that subclass is it's also the subclass that can make breakable objects, which we didn't really touch on. Stuff like wooden
barricades, and then spiked barricades. They can drop right in front of you, and bear traps. So we got throwing weapons, we have traps, healing, we have ranged weapons.
Yeah, a lot of equipment that you can use, and just a really good variety of choices on the battlefield. In addition to those weapons and subclasses and passives, you have the choice of your specific weapon. We talked about the variety of the weapons and how it's huge. But one thing is, each subclass doesn't have completely unique weapons. Some subclasses do, but there are a lot of melee weapons that are used across classes. And something to mention, there's even a Knight class. He has access to all of the highest damage weapons in the game, but he doesn't get any passive bonuses. That's his passive bonus, is having access to the highest damage weapons.
Yeah.
There are many different armor pieces and weapon skins that you can unlock for your character and put on them. Overall, it's all very realistic.
Yeah, for the most part, all of the armors are realistic.
I would say the cosmetic variety
I think
is pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty fair. And I'll also say that even though there's those chances of it making it hard to distinguish who you're fighting, generally the knights you're still going to be able to tell because they're
Yeah,
wearing a huge metal chest plate.
yeah, they do a
And
pretty good job.
it's always going to look like a big metal chest plate in all the cosmetics, it seemed.
I will say there's no cosmetic I ever really unlocked and was like, wow, that's gonna look really cool on my character. I think that's gonna be so unique. It was just like,
Nah, I got one that looked really
oh
good.
yeah,
I got a pig face bassinet and it looked amazing.
there's just nothing that really stuck out to me
Yeah.
all that much. Same thing with weapons.
I think the voices are the best though, because I mean,
There are a good
unless
amount
you
of
play in third
voices.
person, you're not gonna see your character a lot.
I play in
But
third person,
you do. But
and I
the
still didn't
voices,
feel like the cosmetics were all that
yeah. But the voices
interesting.
though are
Voices
going
are
to
good.
be like omnipresent when you're playing, no matter whether you're playing third or first
An
person.
interesting thing is, in addition to the voice and the armor, you can entirely customize your character. But most of them, or like once you unlock some armor, they're most likely you won't be seeing their
Yeah,
face, depending on what you pick. I guess it's what you pick. But overall, I mean, the facial customization is good.
yeah, it is pretty good. They actually have a surprising amount of cosmetics, and they're not really. It's not something where you really have to grind a ton to get most of them, but
I
then
thought
there
it was
are
a bit of a
some of
grind.
them that are a grind.
I thought overall the amount of now
The majority that I saw were usually the low cost, but there's a few that are like ridiculously high cost.
but overall, I still felt it was kind of a sluggish progression through the cosmetics, and I never. That isn't what pushed me to keep going into the game. It was the central gameplay loop itself, and that works so well.
Yeah,
That obviously this is just an addition to it. I just don't
yeah,
know how much it really adds.
yeah,
All of the earnable cosmetics are also purchasable
yeah.
with real world currency. Those are microtransactions. That is why I'm not a big fan of the sluggishness, I think, of the
Well,
progression system.
I didn't have too big of an issue progressing, but I mean, it's not like I got to a crazy level, but I kind of mained one class for a little while, and by the time I was done, I could afford multiple of the low tier cosmetics
Yeah.
and then multiple of the mid tier. But I'm pretty sure, buy most of the night class
And
stuff after playing it for a while.
everything's overpriced when it comes to microtransactions,
It's because it
unless
wants you to pay real money.
no, well, everything's overpriced in regards to how
Oh,
much
oh yeah,
real
how
money
much
you
real
can
money you
spend on
pay?
it,
Yeah,
and unless you just want to support this game and like have them make more stuff, expansions, I wouldn't recommend buying any of the microtransactions. I
yeah.
wouldn't recommend buying most
I
microtransactions.
won't recommend microtransactions ever unless you specifically like the company and respect them enough and think that they'll actually use that money to then make new content.
Now, a little bit different than microtransactions is the battle pass. Now, as battle passes go, I think this is a one of the most ethical ways of doing them, or ways I've seen done. Like half of it is free
Yeah,
instead of like a very small portion things here and there, little wobbles.
little tidbits.
Yeah, little tidbits. You get like half of the battle pass for free, and also it's not limited time. You can complete this battle pass at your own pace at any time, and it will always remain there.
It kind of reminds me of Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite, you can earn half of the battle pass for free, I believe.
Mm.
If I remember right. I hope they did the same with the second one because I only ever looked at the first one. Really, I haven't played
Is it
Halo
timed
Infinite in a
though?
while. I'm pretty sure you can go back and try to like earn stuff for one that already happened.
Well, that's cool.
I think that's a pretty fair way, I
Yeah,
guess, to do it.
it's much
And this
much
game
better,
does it like that.
much better than the limited time ones that they have.
Yeah. You better buy this skin now, or else you're never gonna see it
Yeah.
except on other people.
Or you need to log into this game every day if you're gonna
Fallout 76.
of this season, or you're gonna lose the money you spent to buy it.
I remember grinding just to get the Red Menace power armor, and that was just it was too much.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we are just kind of jumping around a little randomly here with mounted
Yeah.
combat,
Mounted combat kind
but
of ended up in a weird spot in our
it
outline.
sort of fits because campaigns were something that was added post launch, and we're going to talk a little bit more about post launch content in the mounted combat.
Yeah.
Now, as this was added post launch, when I hopped into a game of mounted combat, I thought, is this going to be a little iffy? Is this going to not feel quite right? And overall, while it is not near as polished as the main melee combat or the main, even the archery, I think it's pretty good. I'm
Yeah.
not great at it.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to get around unless you have the if you have the specific weapon that they added along with it, the lances.
Yeah.
That you may start if you spawn on a horse, then you will likely spawn with one of these weapons. That weapon's super easy to use on the horse for the most part.
Most spears work pretty
Yeah.
well.
But
Like with a
I
lot
will
of
say it kind of makes sense though, because if you end up losing the main weapon built for mounted combat, then it should get harder.
Yeah.
And it really does, because then you have to time your swings a whole lot more. And your
overall
stabs.
horse control feels fine enough.
Yeah.
A little
I mean,
as unwieldy
not-
as a horse would be or should be in a
yeah,
game.
in middle of large scale combat.
Probably less unwieldy than a horse would
Yeah.
actually be. But
Yeah.
which
but-
this game
It does a pretty good job, I think, though.
and I
with the
would
horses.
say throughout everything in this game, it does a great job of balancing realism and what makes good fun gameplay.
Yeah. Like when you're getting whooped, it feels like you're getting whooped because,
Yeah.
at least in first person, it'll make your screen shake a bit.
Yeah.
It can make it kind of difficult to come back after you take a huge hit, but it makes sure it's not too difficult so that it's still
it's not like
it's still a game.
it's
You're
not
not gonna get knocked to the ground for 5 minutes because you took a hit to the head from a hammer, but you're definitely going to feel like you're getting your ass whooped.
it seems like in every part of the game where they're like, how do we make the gameplay good? They also cut it back with, okay, but we need to make sure it stays realistic. But I think in most places, this really supports the game and is the reason the game is so fantastic. And it's the same thing that Battlefield has been doing for years. Overall, the freaking maps in this game,
Are some really top tier maps.
Chef's Kiss. They're just they're just fantastic. Where the team deathmatch maps are usually just like big open fields,
Yeah,
which is all they really need to be.
That fits a lot, and also there's still enough, I think, in especially the main big open field team deathmatch area. I think they've got a hill with a tree on it, and then a ditch that has, I think, a cart or something because it's a little road to one side. They've got a little bit of landscape, but not too much, so that you can still see the swaths of soldiers fighting each other in this open field, but still have small little bits of strategy based on the different, I don't know, I guess outliers of that map.
Yeah,
and
the arenas are pretty cool.
Yeah.
They add some
Arenas
things
are cool.
that are maybe you wouldn't expect to be in just an arena, things that aren't completely necessary, just
pitfalls.
Yeah, or just I don't know, a staircase with a balcony, just things that you don't necessarily have to put in there.
There's tons of destructible stuff that's not even doesn't even need to be destructible, but it is, and sometimes it's just fun.
Not quite on the level of Battlefield. You're not going to level the map, but
now there is some structures where you do end up destroying them, such as the Tenosian lighthouse.
Yes, that brings us to the 64-player maps, the main draw. And these maps are outstanding, just fantastic map design.
Yes.
For one, each, like we talked about before, each map is curated to the specific scenario, and it's basically like a campaign mission, but where everybody is multiplayer characters.
Yeah, and usually there's multiple avenues for attackers to go through.
Basically always.
And, it's not ever, except for, I think one little part of maybe one map that comes to mind ever falls into kind of like hallway defending being the only big thing.
And even if you are defending a hallway, there's usually ways in and out of that. There's a downstairs that you can come up behind. There's a
That's when one of those vanguards throws a firebomb in, and then now either the attackers are blocked for a while or the defenders are completely dead, and then you rush through when it clears.
There isn't all that much verticality in the maps.
Yeah, there's usually about just 2 levels, sometimes 3 on the Tenosian Lighthouse level, I believe. You can go under the bridge, and there's little balconies on the bridge.
And defending on castle walls with archers.
And then there's like siege ramps.
And that's where all of these siege weapons, most of the siege weapons, sort of work contextually along with the objective. It's not as like rigid or on rails as you might think as I say that, a contextual along with the objective thing like this. But you have siege towers where people have to be standing next to them to push them. The objective is to push the siege towers up to the castle walls.
And there's plenty of stuff like that that's more something to open up another avenue. Usually the ramps and the towers are the main objective to get over a wall, but there's certain missions where you either need to break down the gate or you have people throw up ladders and climb onto the walls and then open the gate from the actual gatehouse.
You can also use catapults to shoot big rocks at the gates and destroy them.
There's all these different avenues to go about some of these objectives or to try to get behind people. And
it all feels very grounded and realistic still, again.
Yeah. It usually feels pretty realistic about the uses of the different weapons and how you're trying to find an angle on people even though they're behind a big wall, things like that.
And a great thing about the design of these too is the pacing of these mission-like structures is very well done. You start out pillaging some outlying villages, and then you're at the castle walls, and then you're taking out the lord, and it just ramps up that intensity as the mission goes along.
Actually, now that I think about it, there is some goofy ways to utilize these siege weapons too. Such
absolutely.
as, like I said earlier, launching people from catapults. But usually they kind of break their legs on the fall. But occasionally they don't.
And that's one of those moments where they let the goofiness
they let the goofiness come through.
Bit, which isn't a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. They don't take themselves super seriously while also providing a relatively realistic, as far as a video game can get, form of medieval combat. These map designs play very heavy into these objectives they have a lot of the time while also leaving a ton of avenues of strategy. A lot of the maps tend to be either trying to get around a wall or breach a wall.
That's a lot of medieval combat.
Yeah, a lot of medieval combat. That usually is at least one of the objectives in the multiple objectives of one of the 64-player maps.
And usually there's up to 7 or 8 objectives in some of these missions.
Yeah, there's sometimes a lot of objectives. There's some where you start with kind of a big open field with a small road that has prisoners and carts, and then you break them out of there. Then you go break open a wall.
There's one mission where you steal their villagers and pigs
and throw them on the boat.
Yeah, it's all quite thematic for the lore of the game, which there isn't very much of. It's very simple. The Masons are sort of barbarian Viking-esque sort of group, or
having kind of a Celtic style to their standing stones and their weird priests and stuff they've got kind of has a Celtic-ish feel.
Sort of remind me of maybe the Goths.
Yeah, the Goths, the Visigoths.
Yeah, and the Agatha is a Catholic Church kind of group.
Yeah, they're more like that main medieval look that generally the Holy Roman Empire turned into.
Yeah, high class Holy Roman Empire.
And
type.
I mean, it's kind of funny at the beginning of matches. Sometimes you'll have a captain screaming about some kind of reason why the other side is terrible.
Yeah.
You kind of gotta wonder if that's actual lore or if it's propaganda being told by your side, which honestly I think fits the vibe a lot.
And I think all the map design and the mission designs work with the factions that are offensive and defensive very well. Like, so no matter what on a map, or on each specific map, each respective map has a different faction as the defenders and the offenders, the offense and the defense. Then that's never gonna change any other time you play that map. You might change sides, but that particularly isn't going to change. And they work that into the map design. One of them is a Mason castle, one of them is an Agatha castle. And the Tenosians as well. You have the Tenosian lighthouse, as you were talking about. That's a mission where they're defending.
The objectives as a whole, too, like the final objectives, the whole point of everything leading up to that, really fits a medieval age as well. Like, one side in a mission is literally burning a library.
Makes me think of like Alexandria type stuff that was going down, like them sacking Middle Eastern.
The Masons in one of them, I believe, destroy all their statues, destroy their what is that called? It's kind of like a concrete dome with pillars holding it up. I can't remember.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. They just like knock that down, and by the way, if you're underneath it when it falls, it insta kills you. Pretty nice that the game takes stuff like that into account.
There's a great sense of scale to all the architecture and the sense of impact to the destruction during these objectives. Like when that freaking lighthouse comes down, it comes down. And
don't be inside of it.
There's a historical realisticness in addition to a clear creative spirit. And the graphics are just gorgeous.
Like when it comes to their actual building architecture, it tends to try to fall in the lines of what actual medieval stuff looked like with regards to what faction has built this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, but I kind of feel like there's a cartooniness element occasionally.
Yeah.
Especially to the gore. Like the blood is super bright red and stuff like that, and it's almost comical. And I think the voice acting really aids in it being comical.
Yeah.
Things like that. I think there's a slight cartooniness, but not enough to distract from kind of the realistic combat. I think they did a great balance in their art style with the cartooniness being kind of just a touch to...
Just a dab.
Yeah, just a dab to a kind of more grounded medieval look.
They could have very easily just like...
went full on Fortnite and make it all cartoony.
And I think that's seen throughout the whole art design. It's a fantastic looking game, especially for being like a mid-budget.
Yeah.
Especially, and I know this isn't that great of a machine or anything, but on my Series S, like the lighting looks amazing, the level of detail on everything is excellent. The fluidity of the animations.
I mean, I'm on a OG Xbox One, and I think it looks good.
Yeah.
So that's a good sign. The animations definitely look good, I have to say. I mean, it like kind of looks a little goofy when a guy does a side swipe mid-crouch, but for the most part, animations look great.
See, and that's almost like a manipulation of the animations trying to do that. And the thing is that
it's
most of the time...
one animation made by them. It's two animations trying to mix together.
Yeah, most of the time, the animations mix together really well.
Yeah. Like when somebody's doing combos of different attacks at somebody, it usually looks pretty good.
And it's really good that it works this way because of that whole aiming your weapon wherever you look and moving it, and you have to sort of defend by aiming at that. You need that weapon to be exactly where it's going to hit, and you need your...
In thinking about that, though, with the amount of variation you can add by twisting around and looking around while swinging, their animation is really good for being able to deal with that.
Yeah.
Being able to deal with that full range of movement that you can kind of add by twisting when you swing.
And when you get hit, there's some great getting hit animations, and it always looks really good from where you like. It looks like you hit them exactly where you hit them. You
Yeah,
hit them in the head, they fall over from the headshot.
yeah.
You hit them in the leg, they topple over on
Like
that
you're talking about
leg.
when they die in Ragdoll?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. When the Ragdoll physics is pretty good in this game because it does seem to know exactly where you hit them from.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes, like, if you hit someone in their head and their head stays on, it seems like they fly farther. If their head comes off when you hit them in the head, the body kind of drops to the side, not too hard, but the head just goes flying occasionally.
And I don't know much about the physics of decapitation, but is that accurate? Would
I
someone's
mean,
body go farther if their head did not come off, do you think?
probably a bit. What are your final thoughts about Chivalry 2, Brevin?
Chivalry 2 was a game that I had been searching for a long time. That we had both been searching for a long
Yeah,
time. An experience.
I've been wanting a large scale medieval multiplayer game for a very long time that is like able to incorporate siege battling and stuff like that. I mean, this isn't quite what I envisioned, but obviously, like this is about as close as physically possible. Obviously, expectations are not generally met perfectly, anyways, by reality. This game's a lot of fun, I think.
Would highly recommend it. It is on Xbox Game Pass, but I would also recommend the purchase.
Yeah, I mean, this game definitely deserves the price tag that it has. I feel like because I wasn't even really trying to like meaning to get involved in this game a whole lot, and I ended up spending quite a lot of time playing it. Ended up getting some other people I know to play it just so I have more people to play with. That sounds weird, but
And it's a good place for people to come cross consoles, because it's
yeah,
crossplay. And basically anybody can get into it. Like not everybody can be good at it, but anybody can do decent. Like
yeah,
you can go and just start whacking motherfuckers, and you might
yeah.
whack some of your buddies. You might
I
kill
remember
your
when I first
friends.
started, it was about as often as I'd hit an enemy, I'd hit my friend next to me. But yeah, I would say that is something about this game as well, is people who aren't even really all that good at video games, I think could still derive enjoyment from it, even though it's multiplayer.
Yeah,
And usually people who aren't good at video games tend to stay away from multiplayer a bit more because they can't enjoy losing
PvP
constantly. Yeah, PvP multiplayer, my bad. But
only costs $40 retail. I would say I would say it's worth $60.
yeah,
It's as
I would say it is worth the price tag most games release
Yeah,
with.
it is as good as any AAA game out there, if
Yeah.
not better.
Go play this game, you hacks.
Serfs.
Yeah, a bunch of serfs, peasants,
And while you're at it,
plebeians.
like the video if you enjoyed it, and dislike it if you didn't. Tell us what you think about Chivalry 2 and our stupid ass opinions in the comments down
Yeah.
below.
Yeah, if you dislike it, leave a comment as to why.
Yeah, explain to us why you dislike it, and we'll explain to you why you're wrong and plebeian.
No, you'll probably have a good point if you legitimately dislike the video.
Yeah,
Unless you're an asshole.
I was talking about disliking Chivalry 2.
Oh, Chivalry 2. Yeah,
Then you're just wrong
if
and a
you
plebeian.
dislike Chivalry 2, then yeah, you're just wrong.
You could dislike us all day, but just don't. Just take it easy.
What a great outro.
Subscribe to the Verbosity to see more stuff like this.